Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to explore 5 different ideas that are based off of major 7 and major 9 arpeggio patterns. So the goal of this lesson is to give you guys some insight into how I use scale and arpeggio patterns to create ideas. With that being said, then let's dive right into it. Okay, so for this first idea, this is based on an arpeggio pattern where we play the root on the 5th string with our middle finger. So let me demonstrate the arpeggio pattern that this riff is based on. One more time. Now here's the riff. Okay, so taking a look at this riff, there are a couple of cool things that are noteworthy, and the first of which are the physical movements or gestures in the line. So one thing that I really like to do is elaborate on chord shapes, and I do this through these little embellishments or ornamentations. And these can be achieved by starting with a chord and then using legato techniques to embellish that sound when I'm arpeggiating it. For example, this riff starts with this D major 7 shell voicing, and what I like to do is start on the 7th, hammer onto the root, then go through the arpeggio of the shape here until I get to the 7th. And then what I'll do is I'll slide from the 7th into another chord tone, in this case, up into the root. So we get a gesture that sounds like this. And another cool thing about this riff is the use of interesting intervals. So one sound that we get is this major 6 here. And so a major 6 sound is sort of an uncommon type of flavor that you might get in a major 9 structure, but it's certainly one that's possible. In this case, we have a major 6 being formed from the notes E and C sharp, or the 9th and the 7th of this D major 9 sound. So when it comes to your compositions, I recommend that you guys try and explore your chords, scales, and arpeggios for interesting interval content. When you get different kinds of intervals going within your predetermined structures, that's going to lead to some really interesting sounds. For this next idea, this is a fill that I like to use pretty regularly, and it also contains some gestures that I'm a big fan of. So here it is. Alright, so once again, this riff is based on a major 7 arpeggio pattern, which is formed on the 5th string, but this time it's played with the 1st finger, and it looks like this. One more time. So I just want to mention quickly that I've added an additional note in the form of a 9th or the note E. So in this case, you can create an easy major 9 pattern by finding the tone that is a diatonic second above the root. In this case, that's going to be a whole step, which will form a major 9th. So in this case, I've done this to add some extra color and make things sound just a little more interesting. Anyways, analyzing the line a little bit, there are a couple chord structures that are used within the line to create some cool sounds. So first off, we start with this A major triad here, but I play it like this, starting on the D, so we could actually say that this is kind of like a D over A chord or a D major 9 without the 3rd. And then what I do is I slide into the 7th of a D major 7 chord, and then we land on the 5th, and then I play this D sus2 sound here. So if we put it all together, there's very clear sets of chord sounds that are happening, and once again I'm using these physical gestures to elaborate on the sound, creating something that's more interesting and musical. Another thing that I think makes this line sound good is the fact that it descends rather than ascends. And when it comes to arpeggios, I find that ascending arpeggios are a lot more common than descending arpeggios. So from a compositional perspective, if you're looking to mix things up or just create a different texture, then try descending your lines rather than ascending them. That'll definitely mix things up, and it's another tool in your toolbox. For this third idea, this demonstrates how you can use major 7 sounds in contemporary single note or lead playing. And the cool thing about this line is that it uses relatively few pitches, and instead it focuses on creating a percussive sound using alternate picking technique. So here's the riff. Another cool thing about this riff is that it demonstrates how you can get major 7 sounds without having to play a shape that goes across more than 2 strings. In this case, we can achieve those sounds through this parallel major third shape. So in this case, we have a major third here on the G string, and then a major third here on the D string. So if you're looking to inject some easy major 7 sounds into your lead or single note playing, then this is certainly a really easy way to do it. For this next idea, this is really conceptually simple. We're going to take perhaps the most commonly known 2-octave major 7 arpeggio pattern, and we're going to use it to create a line. Though as a heads up, I'm going to add the 9th in the form of a B to create an A major 9 type sound. Let's take a listen to the riff. Okay, so taking a closer look at the major 7 pattern that we're using here, our root is played on the 6th string with our middle finger, and it looks like this. One more time. In terms of the main concepts that are used in this riff, the idea here is to use string skipping to get this up and down type sound. So there's a string skip here, string skip, 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 string skip. So every single note is actually played on a different string. Once again. In terms of interval content, I'm using a 7th, then we have a lot of thirds happening here, and then I end on a 5th, which just kind of helps to punctuate and give us a nice open sound. Finally, for our last idea, the concept here is to inject some solid chord shapes into a line, in this case deriving our chord shapes from a major 9 arpeggio pattern. In terms of the technical details, this riff uses the same kinds of techniques and gestures as the previous lines, but in this case I'm introducing some hybrid picking to create slightly different textures. That being said, let's listen to the riff. Alright, so as we can see, there are clearly some shapes going on in the riff. We've got this sus2 sound here, and then a D major 7 shape, another D major 7 shape, and an A major shape. So these are all derived from a D major 9 arpeggio. And the arpeggio shape that I was working with was based off this major 7. So it looks like this. And once again, if you're looking to create a D major 9 sound, all you have to do is find the root of your arpeggio and then go up a diatonic second. In this case, that's a note E. So if you add an E to this arpeggio, you get that kind of sound. Anyways, as a takeaway, something that I always emphasize to my students is that when they're working on scales or arpeggios, they should try and find as many chord shapes as they can from within those scales or arpeggio patterns. I think that this kind of process is really important as it helps one to see the patterns more easily, and it also helps them to engage with the patterns more creatively. So definitely give this kind of thing a go when you're practicing your scales. Alright folks, so there you have it. If you like this video, then please make sure to like, share, and subscribe as I put out a new video every single week. And if you want to support the channel, then please consider checking out my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you guys will have access to some bonus content like guitar tabs, lesson notes, chord diagrams, and other goodies like that. And honestly guys, the Patreon page really helps me out as it allows me to get some extra equipment to make these videos better. And finally, I also teach lessons through Skype. There's a link to my email address in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in my next video.